And away we go. So usually, I'd start off these episodes, in quite recent times, looking at stuff that me, Eric, and Risk have sent in the group chat that we've seen on one of our pipelines or whatnot, on the big social media platforms. There hasn't been anything sent since the last time I've recorded a podcast episode. So, with that out of the way, let's get right into the news. Labyrinth hits out at Euphoria and says he's done with this industry. On Friday, March 13th, 2026, Labyrinth posted a screenshot on Instagram declaring, "I'm done with this industry," and directing expletives at HBO's Euphoria and Columbia Records. Composed the music for Euphoria's first two seasons, and HBO announced last year that Hans Zimmer would join him for season 3, which is set to launch on April 12th. Sharing a Notes app screenshot, Labyrinth posted on Instagram without a caption, closing with, "Thank you and good night." While fans expressed concern and one reply gained over 18,000 likes. With questions about the season 3 soundtrack, it is unclear if Labyrinth's music will feature, and media outlets have contacted Labyrinth's reps, HBO and Columbia Records, for comment. Labyrinth's music has shaped Euphoria's identity, with All For Us winning an Emmy, and Zimmer praised his contribution, saying it has helped define the show's sound. Wow. Now, it is not clear what in question is the hubble up, or what's in the pickle at any given moment right now. If someone who has been sentimental or central to a show's identity, leaving any future works with the show in question, everyone's going to be asking, what happens next for Euphoria? How will the identity of the show be shaped now? Will it be the same? Or is it going to be completely different to what we've usually seen before? Well, someone's going to crash out at some point, and there we are. Someone crashed out. And that is that. So on and so forth. Even when Zimmer announces he is completely done with the industry as a whole, not just with Euphoria, the show. Euphoria, the show, is still going to continue running for as long as it wants to continue running for, as well as pushing out new episodes and seasons and storylines that connects or expands the current universe of Euphoria. Although I don't watch the show often, I have seen clips of scenes from the show on social media. That's all I know. I have just seen clips of it. And you know what? In my honest opinion, it doesn't look too bad. Not my cup of tea. It just is visually appealing, and yeah, I try to be honest about this, and that's as honest I can be without actually being mean. Not that I have anything mean or terrible to say about the show. I just have other preferences, and it's okay to have other preferences. Say, I prefer this show, or I prefer these characters, or these actors. That's just my preference, and that's fine with me. Gay Muslim influencer hosts inclusive Ramadan meal and calls for acceptance across faiths. In Berlin, during Ramadan, Davich organized an inclusive iftar on Wednesday, March 11th, 2026, with 15 friends of diverse faiths and identities. On Instagram, Davich described how his coming out a few years ago led to social exclusion, prompting him to urge families to include queer Muslims for iftar. As guests filmed the meal, many influencers recorded and posted videos, while a guest performer dressed in traditional attire arrived, increased visibility. Davich tied the gathering to rising attacks and said families and communities should open their doors to queer Muslims, so they do not have to be alone for iftar. I feel like this is a story that Eric would have strong opinions on, not just on the LGBT community, also regarding Islam as well. If Eric was here right now, I'm just wondering what he thinks of the story. I know Eric has spoken strongly against at least one of the two aspects of the story in the past, and it's not going to be no different here. I would say, whilst there's going to be people that aren't going to be included in festivities or holidays, given the choices that they've chosen, or at least their preferences in their own personal lives, there will come a point, there will be events to host different gatherings for particular groups of people that have in the past been excluded from such festivities and holidays. Just like the story that a gay Muslim influencer is hosting inclusive Ramadan meals for queer Muslims, even when there are people that do not agree with the choices or the preferences in people's personal lives. We should at least tolerate such people for at least a couple hours, and then go on, and then afterwards just go on about the rest of your night. And if if there aren't any moments in these festivities where people are included, even if the preferences and the decisions that they made in the past are controversial to not just the faith but also the families in question, then there will come a point that those people will host similar events where they include such people who have been excluded for many years, like in the story. So it's going to come to that point, and it certainly has right now, somewhere in Berlin. What happens next is anyone's guess. People would say it's a one-time thing. Others would say this could be the start of something that opens a lot of doors to controversy. I feel the latter is more likely to happen. There will be more discussions like this in the coming years, and there will be people that will say, I don't like this event. I don't like what these people are doing. It's okay to have opinions like that. What's not okay is to enact violence on such people. We have enough violence already somewhere in the world. Even if we're not involved or caught in crossfires in such violence, that's not to say we shouldn't call out on such actions and events. So yeah, only time will tell. Meteorite crashes through roof in Koblenz, Germany. On March 8, 2026, a bright fireball exploded over Western Europe around p.m. Central European Time, flashing for about 6 seconds before fragments struck buildings in Koblenz, punching a hole into an unoccupied bedroom, the European Space Agency said. Because of its approach from a bright sky direction, the meteor was likely not visible to large-scale telescope sky surveys, as small meteorite-sized objects from daytime regions are often missed and only 11 have been detected pre-entry, ESA said. More than 3,000 eyewitnesses reported the flash and fragments, while Europe's All-Sky 7 fireball network and eyewitnesses, photographers, and mobile phone captured the event, and photographs showed 9 golf ball-sized rocks. Authorities report there were no injuries from the fragments, while local residents and collectors have recovered suspected pieces that remained unconfirmed, and media outlets sharing photos show roof damage as assessments continue. ESA aims to improve early detection with projects like the Fly Eye Asteroid Survey Telescope, noting objects a few meters in diameter strike Earth from once every few weeks to once every few years. Now that is an interesting story. A golf ball-sized meteorite, I believe, came falling from the sky and struck a bedroom that was empty at the time when it struck, somewhere in Germany. And now people are wondering, where did this come from? And, well, people at the European Space Agency are like, how could we not have detected this sooner? We need to work on detecting these things quicker and soon as possible. And they will. They certainly will. And I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. It'd be pretty at this day and age, it's pretty hard to do so. Especially with AI being so advanced, you can make anything with AI, and there'll be not everyone, but a handful of people they'll believe it's real. And that is scary. Very scary. Alberta Transportation Minister says passenger rail plan coming within weeks. This past week, the Alberta government said a long-awaited passenger rail master plan will be published within weeks, with Devon Drishin hoping to announce it next month. Almost 2 years ago, the United Conservative government announced plans to create a Crown corporation to oversee rail development amid long public debate and a history of discussions over a decade. Planners aim to include proponents for a high-speed Edmonton to Calgary link and connect both international airports, with the government expecting the master plan to be published within weeks. Despite the imminent master plan, development timelines remain uncertain as observers note passenger rail proposals have been debated for years and actual construction could take longer than the Alberta government plans. The Canadian Press reported on March 6, 2026, that Alberta's government plans to release its passenger rail master plan within weeks, aiming for an announcement next month. Good on you, Alberta. Nice to see that some form of public transit in North America is actually being done. Now, the question is, and it's anyone's guess of when that time will come, when will Alberta become the US? I've heard news outlets, well, a while ago, or actually quite recently as well, that people in Alberta have gathered around discussing potential chances or proposals for Alberta to be the 51st state of the United States of America. Not to say this is going to happen this year, or maybe even next year. At some point during Donald Trump's second term, it's going to happen. I'm not going to make a wild guess. I'm not going to be absolutely certain. I have a feeling that the support for Alberta to secede from Canada to join the US is growing stronger and stronger by the weeks and the months as well. And for anyone that doesn't want Alberta to join the United States or even against Alberta proposing such an idea to secede from Canada to join the US, fair enough. It's not everyone around the world that likes the United States for anything. Can't argue with that. That does not mean it's not going to happen with Alberta. If you were going to the Alberta province in Canada and asked anyone about secession from Canada, you will get people that will say, "I'm happy being part of Canada. I don't want to secede to the United States." There will be people, on the other hand, that will say, "Oh, I don't want to be part of Canada anymore. I want to join the United States." Or possibly there'll be people not there'll be a small group of people that will say, "We want Alberta to be its own thing. We don't want to join anyone. We want to do our own thing," they say. So let's just I did check on Polymarket. Chances of secession. It's not fully guaranteed. Fully guaranteed when it will happen in 2027. There is a chance that at some point during Trump's current presidential term, his second term, Alberta will secede from Canada and join the United States. But if none of that happens, well, we only have ourselves to blame, even me. I wouldn't advise taking all this information from these episodes. I will advise people do their own research. There is more. There's so much in this world that not even I know, and I always pay attention to a lot of stuff somewhere around the world. So that's a heads up for all of you listeners. Fish are evolving to be smaller, threatening global food supply. The science paper found that evolution will reduce global fish yields by 1/5 under current warming and up to 30% in high emission scenarios. According to the study published today, warming waters drive fish to grow faster, mature earlier, and decrease maximum size, reducing sustainable harvest despite helping fish persist. In total, the life histories of nearly 3,000 fish species were tested to corroborate the model's accuracy, which projected future yields across 43 major fisheries worldwide. The study predicts reduced protein availability and bigger industry losses, meaning over 1.1 billion meals lost annually and 50% higher fishing industry losses, David Resnick said. This evolution is good for fish, but bad for fisheries, Professor Craig White said, urging strong climate policy to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and preserve roughly 18 million metric tons. If fish are maturing at a significant rate, and that is somewhat, and it's in even the sight is good for the fishes, great. And even when people are not going to have much crustacean to eat, I know, actually, wait, what was I going to say? I know lots of people would say, it's part of nature. We capture food, we eat food. That's part of the natural order. The amount of fish that people are capturing, not just eating, capturing, it seems excessive in my opinion. And I'm someone who's all for the natural order. Too many livestock, both land and sea, is getting depleted as the years go by. And again, even when considering a moment in time where animals would eventually have to be killed off for food for humans to eat, the number of animals being unalived, both on land and sea, in my opinion, I think it's too much. We should allow different animal species to expand their yields, expand the bloodline to future generations, to increase the populations of such animal species. Not just for the sake of having enough of animal species to consume when their time is up, and then they become food for humans to eat. This is all for the sake of, I'm not just going to say, the environment and the climate. Even though that is true, I'm not just going to jump to that statement. I would also say, for the sake of education as well, people ask, were there any time where animals like flightless birds and insects with hairy legs or different unusual anomalies that we didn't think would be possible, but it is possible. There are animals, there are a handful of animal species that are now extinct, especially the dodo. Now, even when the chances of the dodo coming back is near impossible, I've heard quite recently that specific animal species that we thought were no longer alive or on the verge of extinction, they're making a comeback. And their species in question is no longer a threat. So that's good to hear. So back to the story about fish are evolving to be smaller, threatened global food supply. Good for the fishes. And I know it'd be disappointing for the fish lovers that eat fish at some point in their lives. If you care so much about what you're eating in terms of the animals, the animal meats, surely you should be able to understand that with very low animal populations, there isn't going to be much animals left to not just observe, but to have its meat consumed for whatever reasons that animal's no longer alive anymore. I know not a lot of people are all for animal slaughter. That is okay. That is absolutely understandable. It's still gonna happen anyway. And for the people that do consume animal meat, and are concerned for if there's only going to be any more animals left for its meat to be consumed, think about how many of that animal species are still alive left. If they are at the verge of extinction, then I would advise looking into protecting not just the habitats and wildlife environments, look at the strengths of their predators, that not just humans, other animal predators that will be a threat to the said animal species. That's at least my understanding. If anyone else has more knowledge, they can say it here or anywhere else. I know from at least my understanding, if people are wanting to combat extinctions of animal species, it's not enough to provide strengthening barriers for their habitats. You also have to look at the strength of their natural predators that will be a threat to the said animal species outside of humans. Norway's skiing champion, Klæbo, taken to hospital after nasty sprint crash. Oh dear. Poor thing. Norwegian cross-country skier Johannes Klæbo, who won a record 9 gold medals at the 2026 Winter Olympics, was taken to the hospital after a nasty crash during a World Cup sprint race in Drammen. Klæbo lost his balance and fell backwards, hitting his head on the snow during a semi-final heat. Team doctor Ove Firagen said Klæbo was conscious, but the fall had to be taken seriously, and he was undergoing tests for a potential head injury. I hope he's alright. Even if there isn't any serious injuries, scratches, and he's allowed to continue competing, it's quite unfortunate to hear that athletes are prone to getting injured, even from aspects that are far beyond their control. So hopefully Klæbo managed to recover and he can continue competing for the remainder of the Winter Olympics. I know the Paralympics is going on, so yeah. And regardless of the main Olympics being over or not, hopefully Klæbo is in good condition to continue competing in future competitions where he'll be asked to compete again. It'll be unfortunate that the injury he has sustained would leave him to an early retirement. That'd be very unfortunate. So sad. Lufthansa to operate majority of planned flights during pilot strike. On Thursday, a 2-day pilot strike at Lufthansa began and runs through Friday, with the Vereinigung cockpit union estimating around 300 flight cancellations each day. At Germany's main hubs, Munich, Germany, and Frankfurt, Germany, cancellations are especially expected, with 7 of 9 flights cancelled by Thursday afternoon. Lufthansa says it is rebooking affected passengers free of charge and notifying them via mobile, while passengers can reschedule through the airline portal and should check booking status if not contacted. Airports and the airline advise passengers to check flight status. Under EU law, affected passengers may claim €250 to €600 for cancellations or delays over 3 hours. I've heard about that for many years. Nearly all Lufthansa services to and from Copenhagen Airport on Thursday and Friday have been cancelled, the airport's website shows. Yeah, again, I've heard so much about claiming a couple €100 if your flight's been cancelled for more than 3 hours. Nice to know that that law is effective as it should be. And as for the strikes, although it's not clear what the reason for the strike is, I know someone else will provide more information on that. I know one thing is certain: no matter how long people go on strike, there will be a possibility that to make up the loss of staff that are absent from the workplace, either the remaining staff not on strike pick up the pace, the slack, and fill the other gaps that needs to be filled, or possibly the Lufthansa in question, Lufthansa would likely hire, maybe at the last minute, not sure if that's even logistically possible, temporary staff, specifically for the days the strike goes on for. And then the moment the strike is over, the temporary staff leaves the Lufthansa airline company and then goes off doing whatever they did before, or were about to do after what they did, filling in full gaps during the strike. There are cases that strikes have actually been effective. However, other times strikes most likely don't end up in the workers' favour. At best, in such scenarios, half the demands the unions propose are only met. The other half, they're like, no, we can't do that, says the employers of said company. Or at worst, nothing gets met, and then the workers on strike continue going back to resuming with their work anyway. That's not to say strikes aren't effective. It is a massive headache. They are an absolute headache for companies trying to fill in capacity, working capacity, and of course, the loss of revenue, where staff that were assigned to specific tasks are not available to work those specific tasks because they're on strike, demanding higher pay, better working conditions, bonuses on top of their minimum wage slash salary pay. That there are those variables that are likely to happen at some point in any industry. And whilst there is an impact, an effect across European airline industry, hopefully, other than the strike demands being met by the employers, hopefully the strike in question as it stands now doesn't have too much of an effect for passengers going to different destinations, wherever that might be. Morrissey calls off concert in Spain after local festivities deprived him of sleep. On Thursday, British singer Morrissey cancelled his Valencia concert, his official website saying catatonic state. Wow, catatonic state. Arriving late Wednesday, after a two-day drive from Milan, Morrissey was kept awake by loud techno singing and megaphone announcements from Valencia's Las Feas festival. Demand for the Valencia show was strong, with nearly 1,500 tickets sold and prices starting at €103. The currency sign in the summary is not clear. €103, I'd assume. While organizers and Palau de Leats offered no confirmed refunds or rescheduling. Remaining Spanish dates, including Zaragoza and Sevilla, now face uncertainty as fans await promoter updates and refunds after Morrissey's show was withdrawn. As a noisy pyrotechnic event with round-the-clock street parties, the Las Vegas Festival is UNESCO listed and climaxes on March 19th, while more than 12 million people in Spain faced noise above 65 decibels. I don't blame them. I'm all for having a good time and staying up all night for festivities and celebrations. In fact, I was going to say something, but it's just slipped. To not get any sleep because of the noise from the festivals that have been taking place somewhere in Spain. Getting on the stage looking so tired is not ideal. Not even close to being the best case scenario. Hopefully, Morrissey recovers in terms of his energy levels. He gets just enough rest, actually more than enough rest, so he can continue with his shows in Spain. It's quite unfortunate that a concert could not go ahead because the artist in question didn't get enough sleep from the noise coming from the festival in Valencia when he was there. Digital reconstruction reveals the face of Littlefoot, a nearly 4 million-year-old human ancestor. March 2nd, researchers published a digital reconstruction of Littlefoot's face in Comte Rendu Peluvo and questioned its species assignment, suggesting it might not match known Australopithecus species. Discovered in the 1990s, Littlefoot's foot bone was first identified in 1994 at the University of Witwatersrand, Strand, Johannesburg, and the rest was recovered from Stegfontein Caves, South Africa, but the skull was crushed after about 3.67 million years underground. Comparing measurements across specimens, researchers used a 2019 synchrotron X-ray scan at the United Kingdom facility and found features resembling East African Australopithecus species specimens, rather than southern African fossils. The peer-reviewed study found that La Trobe adjunct Dr. Jesse Martin said, "Our findings challenge the current classification of Littlefoot and highlight the need for further careful evidence-based taxonomy in human evolution." The team says these results point to a patchwork of human evolutionary traits and plan future modeling of teeth and brain case to clarify Littlefoot's link to the genus Homo. I don't have a strong opinion on this story. It is, however, fascinating. Millions of years ago, whatever was found was not matched somehow. It may not be the right species, they say. I'd assume the search is still on, or at least the research, for something. I'm not sure. I know they said something about the Australopithecus species, I can't say that right, and the link to the genus Homo, or the genus Homo. I guess the research continues until they find the missing link, or at least a link. It's still the search still continues. Regardless, the search still continues. Grubs star Zach Braff forced to address weird rumors he's dating. ... I thought there was going to be more to the headline. It just ends with ... So yeah, that's what I have to see. Posting to his Instagram stories on Thursday, Braff denied he is dating an AI chatbot. What? Okay. Let's see what more there is. And said the rumor may be from a Scrubs storyline. Okay. But still, it's kind of funny. It's still, if this was remotely true, that would be funny. Okay. I'm calm now. The rumor began in December, when Max Silvestri on the I Need You Guys podcast described an actor who brings the chatbot with him, and a Dumois repost this week reignited the speculation on Thursday. Fans and gossip sites quickly responded, with hundreds naming Zach Braff and dragging Jason Segel and David Harbour into speculation, while the r/4moi subreddit expressed reservations. Braff added that he was not on TikTok and had no idea the three comedians were the origin, then resumed promoting the Scrubs reboot and urged kindness. Researchers note that AI companionship can increase loneliness, while some users report positive effects, and the episode illustrates how months-old celebrity gossip can resurface and impact reputations. So, other than the allegation that not even close to being the truth, a celebrity dating an AI chatbot, as funny as it sounds, putting that to aside, and whilst there will be people, members of the public, that will be curious and have questions about what celebrities are doing and what they have said in the past, there comes a point in a lot of celebrities' lives that what starts out as a rumor then becomes problematic. It becomes a serious issue to the point, to some extent, there could be serious implications, not just to the person that's involved in the crossfire of the rumor, it also severely affects how that celebrity continues living in their day-to-day lives. And again, when I first read about what the rumor was, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of funny at first. Of course, even as funny these stories sound, there's going to be more to what the red headline reads, regardless of initial reactions. You never know, people might change their tone or reaction to the story once they go into more detail and look up more information on the story in question. It's kind of a plot twist. What people think was something funny, it turns out, oh, this is serious. The effects of this is very bad. So long as people know the circumstances and the key details and context to any story, fair enough. You can't always just read the headline and say, oh my gosh, it's so true! How did I not see this sooner? This isn't 2003 anymore. Or at least, it's not 1995. Or at least some year in the late 20th century. You can't just read headlines and say, that is awful. There is more information that either makes the headline misleading or even the key details or context of the story even contradicts the headline in question. There's that for consideration. Of course, not all news outlets are going to make headlines misleading on purpose. Surely other news outlets would call out the other news outlets on their bullcrap. So back to the story about Zach Braff having to address the rumor about dating an AI chatbot. Again, regardless of how people initially react to these things, whether it be a funny joke, something that is serious, something that's concerning, there's going to be more beyond the headline. And there's going to be context, additional context, that other journalists are not going to be addressing. Or in fact, they would address it, they just forgot to mention that when they were writing the story. And then other news outlets then pick up the pace and the pedal to address that key information for them. Given how much access we have to technology, the internet, social media, and how information spread across the world, I'd assume something like this won't happen again. I guess not, I guess. I guess not, I guess. Apparently not, I guess. There's still going to be people that are going to take stories for granted. They only read a few sentences, leave it at that, tell everyone, oh my gosh, have you heard about this story? Which I just read a few stories of, I didn't know anything else. That's it. I guess there are gullible people in this world, even with all the technological advancements and all the access to information we could possibly ask for. And how easy it would be to get important information across to people across the globe. There's still going to be people that's going to jump on the bandwagon, jump to conclusions, only read the first few sentences or even just the headline and say, and believe that is what actually happened. Forget the key details. There's nothing else that's worth noting that changes the headline in question. Now, most people's attention spans most people can't be bothered to read more than 3 paragraphs of any text. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is, or even it's something that people are even interested in. Most people don't want to read more than 3 paragraphs, and if people do, I'd assume they're reading something that these people are genuinely interested in, or the small number of people are essentially bookworms that enjoy reading books every now and then. And good for them. And that is it for the episode.